The U.S. is home to many of the world's most valuable companies. It's often thought of as the land of opportunity for anyone with a big vision.
It's been home to cutting-edge inventions like the light bulb, the airplane, the iPhone, but when it comes to its infrastructure, a different story is slowly unfolding. The top 10 fastest train systems in the world, none are in the US. The world's tallest buildings, the US doesn't even make top 5. And the 7 longest bridges in the world, they're all in Asia. Let's rewind and remember what historically made the US ahead of its time. First, the bridges.
The Brooklyn Bridge was the first steel wire suspension bridge ever constructed.
When it first opened, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world. In fact, it was twice as long as any other of its time, and built to sustain an unprecedented amount of weight.
The Golden Gate Bridge, well, it opened in 1937, and for a few years it was the world's largest suspension bridge span.
Then there's the skyscrapers. The Empire State Building was the world's tallest building for almost 40 years. It was surpassed by the World Trade Center's North Tower. Soon after, it was taken over by Chicago's Sears Tower. The public transit systems.
More than 1,000 miles of train tracks connected many different parts of Los Angeles, and for a time, it was even recognized as the best public transportation system on the planet.
And even irrigation.
Los Angeles created a 233-mile water duct back in 1913, and at the time, it would come to be known as the world's largest water project in history. And even though the city's population was only 300,000 at the time, the system could supply enough water for a population of several million, which ultimately would come to enable the region's explosive growth that was soon to come.
Fast forward to today. Many of these titles have not only been dethroned, but some cities are in need of major help. In fact, an $800 million emergency rescue plan was recently approved for New York City's troubled subway system. Just take a look at the World Economic Forum's list of countries with the best infrastructure, which judged economies based on their transport system, power, and communications networks. The US doesn't even make the top 10. The top 3? Hong Kong, Singapore, and the Netherlands.
Now imagine for a second that a country was like a company.
Even with massive revenues, a big company often has a harder time innovating than, say, a startup. A corporation's goal, after all, is to maximize profits while minimizing risks. But if a company isn't able to innovate, you could end up with a Blockbuster or Kodak, both of which dominated their industries until the lack of ability to adapt meant they would come to fail. Take even a relatively new company like Facebook. A large portion of its innovation is coming through acquisitions of companies including Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus. Now, many of the locations leading the way in infrastructure are building smart cities, and they tend to be smaller. Think the United Arab Emirates' Dubai and city-state Singapore. The population of the United States is 323.1 million. It has an extensive layer of government, including county, local, state, federal governments, and many agencies.
Now, of course, many of the world's most ambitious ideas are coming out of the US.
But ideation and execution are two different things. Take, for instance, Elon Musk's Hyperloop.
The first proposed Hyperloop was between here in San Francisco and Los Angeles. The 2013 proposal would take a 5-hour drive and turn it into about a 35-minute ride on a high-speed rail. But a few years after that initial proposal, the first Hyperloop isn't likely to be here.
But instead, it likely could launch in the UAE in 2020, connecting Dubai and Abu Dhabi, home of titles like the world's tallest building and the world's largest indoor theme park.
So if innovation tends to come from a nimble team, company, and even country, is the United States just too big to innovate?